So, my friends, we have arrived at our final Sangha gathering of the year. And that means that we're as close as we will be together to the threshold of the winter solstice, which, of course, is that moment when the earth is as far away as it gets from the sun. And in many traditions, this is considered a very sacred time of year. Not because the darkness is comfortable necessarily, but because it invites us to pause and reflect on both inner and outer cycles of renewal. And when we do this, we can see that in nature, in the season of darkness, life slows down in a really literal way. Growth doesn't stop, but it goes underground. Resources are stored and gathered mindfully, at a different pace. And in attuning to these changes, the natural world invites us into a different rhythm, one that is quieter and deeper and attuned to more subtle forms of knowing. And yet, in our culture, and even in some spiritual communities, there can be a rush to celebrate the return of the light this time of year, even on the darkest day. And believe me, I deeply understand this impulse. In fact, I've been known to say, some of you may have heard me say, that I consider the winter solstice the most celebratory day of the year, precisely because it marks this shift to returning to the light. But as the days have been getting shorter this year, I've been reflecting on how it would be a misunderstanding to believe that wisdom or insight depend on this kind of illumination, when we can see what's going on in every direction and name it and understand it and get that broad, clear perspective that is so easy to get attached to, at least for me. Although truthfully, I don't believe this is a particularly personal preference. In our modern society, we revere clarity, right? And that type of vision that lets us see way down the path ahead. And that kind of clear seeing is valuable and wonderful, of course. Nothing against clarity, my friends. And thank goodness there are seasons for it. But the winter months invite us into a different type of knowing. A kind of knowing that doesn't depend on sight at all. And actually, many Dharma traditions point to this shift from cognitive understanding, clarity, to understanding through direct experience. And the Buddha described prajñā, or true wisdom, as something that doesn't come from thinking about our experience, but from feeling it directly. So from meeting what's here without needing to illuminate it or analyze it. And this is the foundation of the Satipatthana teachings. Knowing the body as the body, the feelings as feeling, the mind as mind. So not conceptually, but through intimate contact. And this brings us to this beautiful teaching from the Zen tradition. It's a one-line teaching. It says, not knowing is most intimate. And I'm going to invite us to take that in and just reflect on it for a second. Not knowing is most intimate. It's really profound. To me, this phrase points to a kind of closeness, a kind of tenderness that becomes available only when our eyes or minds can't quite find the shape of things. When we stop striving for clarity, the wisdom that arises is different. So we soften our grasp on answers and let ourselves feel and live our way into the questions instead. And to make this more tangible, think about what happens when you're in a room and the lights go out. You stop moving quickly, that's for sure. I mean, there's no planning 3 steps ahead. You slow down, you put your hands out, and you feel. And you have to become intimate with your immediate environment through the senses of touch and sound in order to navigate safely. This is the intimacy of the dark. And I've been moving through my own version of this lately. There have been places in my life and my practice where clarity, let me tell you, has been nowhere to be found. No matter how much effort I put into trying to shine a light on these shadowy places. And honestly, my instinct at first was to try to solve this problem of darkness. But through practice and reflection and bringing this inquiry with me into the natural world, I realized that what was being asked of me was not to find more sources of light or to strain myself even further in my efforts to see. It was more intimacy with what's here. Through that soft turning inward that allows me to feel my way rather than see my way to understanding. And if anything about arriving at that awareness sounds graceful, I'm here to tell you, it sure didn't feel that way from within my experience. I think my husband would tell you it didn't look particularly graceful from the outside either. I resisted the darkness mightily, and it felt like it was in the way, and it was obscuring my ability to understand or see my path ahead. And I did my darndest to will some kind of illumination, and all my practices and tools I was using in this purpose until finally I surrendered to what's here, to this season, and I let myself be cocooned by the darkness. You know, in the Thai forest tradition, Ajahn Chah often taught that sometimes we have to let the mind be dark. That in the darkness, a deeper kind of wisdom grows because we're no longer trying to direct it. When we stop forcing clarity, truth reveals itself in a different way. And so from that place of surrender, my own surrender, of radical acceptance, as Tara Brach would say, I wrote myself a letter from love. I've talked a little about this practice here. This is a practice that I learned about from Elizabeth Gilbert, and I can share more about it with you. If you're interested, please ask me. I'd be happy to share. But in this practice, love is a word that could also be replaced by God or awareness or the divine. Whatever word, to you really speaks to this larger space of wisdom. And I wanted to share with you a few words from that letter, which I consider to be from a much wiser source than my human mind. So love said, The season of darkness is precisely for this, to remind you to let go of trying to see and instead to feel. There is an intimacy in the knowing that comes from feeling that cannot be found any other way. And of course, nature models this so beautifully for us. So many ways. Not only in cocoons, but in the germinating of seeds, the running of mycelium, the magic and the mystery of deep ocean ecosystems, and that profound magnetism between the moon, which is the planet revealed in darkness, and the tides. And in all of these cases, nothing can be seen, and yet so much is happening. Growth and intelligence and movement and connection, all through sensing, through subtle responsiveness and powerful forces that depend on an absence of light. The spiritual teacher Adyashanti says, when you get to a place when you don't know, and you don't know what you're doing, and you don't know what's going to happen, that is the beginning of the truth. So for this final practice of the year together, let's embrace that kind of beginning. That opening to this other mode of knowing that doesn't come from clear seeing or bright illumination, but from sensitivity and feeling and deep listening. The intimate kind of knowing we can discover only by surrendering to the dark. So let's practice together, my friends. And I'm really feeling this, this tenderness, this preciousness of practicing together today, moving into this space. And as I said, please consider as you're choosing a posture how you might feather the nest to offer an especially safe cocoon for this practice. So whatever that means, really feeling supported and held. And as you're ready, just allowing the eyes to close gently or softening the gaze. And inviting a sense of settling in, kind of the way that dusk slowly envelops a landscape. So feeling that energy of quiet and stillness and darkness, just spreading through your body, heart, and mind. And as you're arriving, noticing if even behind closed eyelids, there is still a subtle strain of looking or seeing. sometimes even with the eyes closed. We're still trying to see, so you can invite the eyes today to soften back into the sockets and rest. For these few moments, there is nothing to see or track or solve. Just a letting go. Of any need to figure it out. And beginning the journey of navigating by feeling, inviting you to feel what it's like to be in the body right now. Noticing the felt sense of tightness or space, softness, structure, sensation, temperature. Allowing the body to be received by the steadiness of the earth beneath you. And cradled lovingly between this steady support and the vastness of a night sky. Cocooned and held, belonging as your birthright. Nothing to earn. And slightly widening the attention now as if the space around you is a quiet sanctuary. A soft cocoon of the same darkness that holds seeds and mycelium and the deepest ocean currents. A kind of velvet darkness that knows how to tend what cannot be seen. And inviting a softening, a blurring of the edges between this darkness and your being. Dissolving into it. If you notice any resistance, any tightening or contraction, just meeting that with kindness. For some of us, there is a fear that arises in the presence of the dark. So not forcing anything, but meeting that edge and softening. And from within this sacred cocoon, opening to an inquiry, not for the mind, but for the body and heart to feel. Where in your life are you being invited to feel your way to knowing rather than see your way to clarity? Allowing that question to permeate your awareness, not searching for an answer, but opening and sensing. Where in your life are you being invited to feel your way to knowing rather than see your way to clarity? You might experience this as somewhere where the roadmap seems to have run out. Or maybe it feels foggy and unclear. Maybe you can't see the solution to what you're experiencing as a problem. Let whatever arises be met with curiosity and tenderness, becoming intimate with your experience and trusting the darkness to guide you to a different type of knowing. I'm inviting you now to let go of the inquiry and take some moments now just to rest in this darkness, welcoming it as a companion and a teacher, in a place where you can lay down the burden of trying to see. We'll close with a poem by Wendell Berry called To Know the Dark. To go in the dark with the light is to know the light. To know the dark, go dark, go without sight, and find that the dark, too, blooms and sings, and is traveled by dark feet and dark wings. Really taking your time, coming back into the body, maybe some deeper, fuller breaths, some movement, and stretch. You might invite the light back into your eyes, particularly slowly. And then bringing the awareness back into our shared space when you're ready, no rush. Thank you for your practice, my beautiful friends.